Okay, we'll start our Wednesday, September 14th special city council work session. An approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
First, I will start with the normal comment phase. If anybody wants to step up and make a comment, or anybody online wants to raise their hand and make a comment. Not seeing any. We will go straight into our presentation, which is Rejuvenation Project Community Outreach for the Kenna Beach Elementary School rejuvenation. Bruce?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first meeting that we are having related to the schematic design. And we have 3 of these scheduled. And it's the 4th meeting that we've had where we've gotten information from the public, or the input from the public. And so I'll be turning it over to, I can't remember his last name.
Johnson.
The golfer.
Johnson.
Yeah. Dustin Johnson. Okay, good. And Kelly Douglas from CETA.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see what I am seeing. There we go. All right. So just a little bit of a recap on where we've been and where we are today. So this is still sort of our phase 1 design services for the CBE rejuvenation project, which included both the pre-design and schematic design. So right now we're in schematic design. We've just gone through the programming and the pre-design phase. The purpose of the last phase was basically to listen to all the stakeholders, including Clatsop Nahalem tribal members, city council, the general public, various organizations, and to distill and organize that information to inform the program of the project moving forward. Tonight is, as Bruce said, the first community outreach event we have in the actual schematic design phase. And this is the phase that we as designers get super excited about because we can stop talking about what we would like to do and imagining it in our heads and start putting pen to paper and showing you some ideas. I want to, as we go through this presentation, there are going to be some things that look very final because they are rendered. I want to just emphasize as much as I can that these images are representing very basic concepts and nothing in these is intended to be final. Basic only. Another thing I want to point out before we start looking at images is that we presented to Clatsop Nahalem tribal members just Friday. You will not see much for tribal representation in the vocabulary of the designs that you're seeing today. We want that to come straight from the Clatsop Nahalem tribe, and we will be collaborating with them as we move forward in the schematic design process.
Can I step in for a second, Dustin? And we have Todd Lawson from the tribe, the young man playing with his computer in the front.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and he's also an architect and a member of the Clatsop Nahalem.
And to reiterate the process of what schematic design is going to look like, we've been in a design phase for the last few weeks. We present our design to Bruce and Rusty, get some ideas in terms of where we might be missing any marks, where we're hitting the marks. If there are revisions to be made, we go back and adjust as needed before we present to the tribe. We go through that process with the tribe as much as we can in the sort of compact time frame we have. So we meet with them, we get a general idea of what are some of the problems, what are some of the benefits of the ideas that we're showing, and do we need to make changes before we present to you all? Then we present it to you. Same thing, we get your ideas. What are the major pros? What are the major cons? After that, we have about 2 weeks to revise our design, come back to you for a milestone approval. We do that entire process 3 times throughout schematic design. And with each time we come to you, the idea is that the number of design options that we're showing you become more finalized and fewer of them as we try to get to that single final schematic design at the end of this design phase. All right. I'm going to pull up the programming report real quick. This is where we left it off in the last phase. And this is what informs us moving forward. So this is the gym building, the classroom building, the food bank. We had a north patio indicated in between all these buildings, much like what is there now, a paved area. We still have the large recreation field for outdoor play areas and outdoor exhibits and events. An entry plaza at the southeast corner of the site. We had in here community garden with raised beds at the east end of the site, and then over towards the west, an amphitheater, and then the entire north and west and partially east sides of the site, surrounded by the natural riparian corridor out there. Of course, beyond that to the west are estuary and beach. So we take that concept and we move into design. And this looks not far off from the scale of everything that we've shown in the programming report. So here in the southeast corner is a plaza. And the plaza has two functions for us as the designers, as we're thinking about what that space is and the purpose of it, what it can be. The first is, as we presented in the programming phase, this is where we want the general public, people who might not be familiar with the historic and cultural significance of the site, or people who just want to know more about it, this is where they start getting introduced to that history. The other purpose of this space is to activate the site. This is intended to be a place for people to congregate, to wait for their friends to show up for an event or to play a game of basketball. Just north of that, we have the community garden or cultural heritage garden. This is something that my understanding was discussed before CETA was brought into the design team, before this project really started. But it's, as we kind of go through these design options, one of the main things I'd like City Council to be thinking about tonight is this garden space really intended to be a community garden? And if so, what kind of a community garden? Maybe some specifics on that. Or when we met with the tribe on Friday, they would really like to use this side of the site as a cultural heritage garden that could be planted with native plants and continue that sort of education that begins in the plaza and extend it out into a more natural landscape. North of that, Necky's Park, that largely remains as is until you get to the new amphitheater. The amphitheater we'll discuss on the next slide, and Kelly's going to go over her concepts for that. And then we've adjusted the paving around the food bank area, and the idea being that folks would still be able to pull in and do a loop and pick up their food boxes and exit, but also allow for some natural space in there for a vegetative screen. So there can be varying levels of separation between cars in that loop and any particular events that might be going on. And then the north patio. And what we're proposing here is that instead of it being asphalt and kind of taken a somewhat amoebic shape over the years, that we kind of do that in a nicer material, plaza pavers. We're not even there yet to a point where we're even really talking about materials, but something other than black asphalt. So if we move past this, and I'm going to back up for just a second there. What I'm hoping to do tonight is to get through all of these slides, and then we'll start taking questions at the end. Otherwise, we probably won't get through them all. There's a lot to talk about with each one, and I'm going to try not to spend too much time talking on each one. As we go through these slides, some critical things that we would like to walk away with tonight is a better understanding of what the desire is for the garden, and whether it's community garden or tribal heritage garden, where the main entrance to the building is going to be, where the kitchen is going to be located based on the options that we show you tonight. And then your general thoughts on the scope and sort of fundamental ideas behind the amphitheater and the plaza, if you feel like there's a concept there that is missing or that is over articulated. Those are the main things. So this next slide is the amphitheater, and I'm going to let Kelly, this is really her baby, and I want her to talk.
Okay, so for the amphitheater, the main goal was for it to be a gathering space. So we created a larger gathering space and then smaller break-off gathering spaces. So the main space is more of a kind of typical amphitheater. It slopes down, has natural seating, and then a space for people to perform or speak, and then it also has a large fire pit in the center that we would think that you can gather around, but you can also have like the salmon festival and stuff and do cooking in the center as well. And then the smaller break-off spaces are for like more intimate moments. They can still be part of the whole, but kind of break away from the bigger group and have smaller stuff. And they also have a fire pit in the center. Overall, we wanted to bring it down to the grade. So like it has about a -3 foot at the very center space. So that allows people to be able to still see out to the estuary and the beach. And we took a more like flowing like shape to just bring in people from all different directions throughout the site. And although it's kind of hard to see in the rendering, we would like it to be more like sloping and stuff. So it's not like a, step. It's more of a natural movement down.
Is it possible to project full screen? Would be easier to see.
I can get rid of that. I think that's about the extent of what I can do from us.
And while it does look very final, like we said, that this is not like the materials and stuff that we want you to get stuck on. So obviously, the grass looks super green and it might not be that way. And so don't get too stuck on that. We're just kind of looking for ideas. And this is kind of what we initially saw for the amphitheater.
Yeah.
Everything down.
Yeah. So Todd with the tribe and some others at our meeting with the tribal members on Friday had some of the same sort of comments about, well, maybe we don't want it to be all concrete, and maybe we don't want it to be that exact shape, and maybe we don't want the material that people in these different tiers that tear down to that little performance area at the base. Maybe that's not grass, maybe that's something else. Everything we're presenting tonight is very basic, so please expect that this is going to be sort of a push and pull process especially as we collaborate with the tribe. All right. Do this. Okay, as we go into this next one, the plaza. So the plaza, we talked about its main function, twofold: education regarding the historical and cultural significance of the site, and to activate that space. We've gone internally through all kinds of different designs, and where we ended up was we really need to pull some of the language in from the amphitheater into this space. It's free flowing, it's curvilinear aspects have a way of drawing people in. A circular area in the center for people to meet while they're waiting for their friends. There's, ample seating places out there, benches. There's a bus stop out here. And, one thing we talked about before we met with the tribal members on Friday, we had our pre-app meeting. And one thing that was talked about was that we have some really beautiful bus shelters that have been done by a local, I think Did she go to the elementary school? And I went and visited some of those after that meeting, and quite fabulous. So the desire here would be to collaborate with her and to make it more speak the language of what's, you know, already out there for bus shelters while fitting the language that we have, whatever it ends up being for our plaza. A lot of landscaping. You see a mural wall in the background. That image that's on the mural wall is completely arbitrary, but the concept is that this is largely an artist community, and this is something that we can use to activate that corner. Other than people being there and conversing and laughing and engaging, you also have this artistic component to it. And we thought it could be really a neat thing in a community like this to have it be even a competition annually or biannually that someone's art is selected to be projected at this scale onto this wall. The lean-to that you see there, that doesn't look like the lean-to that's currently attached to the side of the barrel vault gym. That's intended to be the same lean-to in this particular option. We've given it a different roof, and we would reside it and make it a little more inviting and more aesthetically appealing on a budget. Okay. We move into the space planning options. So we're kind of done looking at the site aspects. Those site aspects are going to be present. If you remember in the programming phase, we talked about a baseline and a baseline plus option. The baseline is basically from the building standpoint, the classroom building, the gym building, bringing it up to code, energy code, seismic code, plumbing code, and using the budget that's left over to spice it up a little bit in the areas that we can with that limited budget. The baseline plus was more to capture the image of what we felt we heard during the programming phase. And so a lot of what you're going to see here beyond the baseline, you're going to see a lot of baseline plus that shows a lot of bells and whistles. And again, the intent is not to show you a final product here, but what are some of the things that appeal to you in this? In a single image, it might be that you like a clear story, you like the way this canopy is, or you like how we've opened up this side of the gym. It doesn't have to be all in one. Okay, think of it as a fruit basket. So this is the baseline space plan option. And with this option, we just have a cover connecting the existing classroom building to the gym building. We keep the mezzanine in the gym. We modify it a little bit in that northwest corner to incorporate a couple of family style single occupant restrooms. We would use the base level underneath the mezzanine for storage and probably a facility manager's office. In this scheme, we've gone with a catering kitchen. And that was one thing that we talked about during programming was what scale of kitchen are we really looking at? Are we looking at a demonstration kitchen sort of towards the lower end? Are we looking at a catering kitchen somewhere in the middle, or a full-size, full-functioning commercial kitchen? Takes the most space of the three options. In this case, it's a catering kitchen. That's about what the size of that existing lean-to will accommodate, with a little bit of extra storage in the back. The main entrance to the gym here would be very much how it is right now. So we would still be accessing the gym through the pair of doors, the location of the existing pair of doors on that west side. We'd want to replace those, of course, with something like storefront doors, and replace other doors, existing doors around there as well, with nicer doors offering views in daylight. On the classroom side, we've modified the restrooms on the eastern end to meet the minimum plumbing requirements for the facility, and that's going to be adding more plumbing fixtures to that space than are currently there, excluding the individual toilet rooms that are in each of the classrooms that would never meet current code and are just probably best not being in those spaces anyways for the function that they're going to serve. So again, the welcoming center in this particular option, and again, this is a welcoming center for the site and another place for the users of the site and the general public to be educated about the historical and cultural significance of the site. Beyond that, you have an internal corridor access to each of the 4 classrooms. And again, those classrooms are intended to function either as workshop spaces, meeting rooms, classrooms, exhibit spaces, multifunctional use. We did combine the 2 classrooms at the end, separating them by a folding partition, and this is going to be standard throughout all of the options. This was pretty well received during the last go around the programming meeting. And this gives you the ability to, instead of hosting 20 people in a room for a meeting or an exhibit or whatever, to double that before getting up to the scale of what could be accommodated by the gym space. You have 3 sort of different scales of functions that can happen. This is the only option where we're showing an interior corridor that connects the Welcome Center to each of these classroom spaces. The rest of them that you see will be on the exterior of the building. There's no reason why this concept of an interior corridor can't be on any of the other space plan options. We just wanted to throw the idea out there. Obviously, one of the benefits of having this corridor is that you have full protection from the weather. You're accessing these interior spaces, these classrooms directly from the Welcome Center. So pretty much have to go through that Welcome Center to get there. And that had always been kind of a goal of ours after hearing about how much interest there was in hearing and understanding the site and its significance. But it also takes away from square footage from these classroom spaces. At the back of each one of these space plan options, we're showing you that same option, but overlaying how a potential rec center could be striped in that space. And it's more for a sense of scale, and we're not saying that this is how it would be striped, but more in this option. For example, if you leave that mezzanine at the north end of the gym, you can get a half court of basketball in there, overlaid on a full court of volleyball and a couple of pickleball courts running perpendicular. There's going to have to be a conversation of how much overlapping can we have and they still be functional. And some groups may be more stern about what they want than others. It just comes with the sport, right? So if we move on to the next one, this is one of the baseline plus options. So there's only one baseline option. From there, we look at the baseline plus options. This one is showing a full commercial kitchen at the south end of the gym. This could start out in this location as a catering kitchen. And because we have the room in the gym, it can expand in the future into a full-size commercial gym. So that's one benefit this option has that the last one didn't. The last one, the catering kitchen, was maxed out in size in that lean-to. We would accommodate storage in this option above the kitchen, and we'd have to use a lift. We're showing a 6x6 lift in here. That's probably undersized. So it would probably need to be an 8x8 to be real functional. And it would have to be sized so that you can get your chairs and tables efficiently up and down that lift to be stored on the mezzanine. In this option, the facility manager's office would also be up there. One of the main differences in this option is that instead of just doing a cover between the existing building and the new building, we're expanding the existing classroom building and attaching it to the gym building. And that gives us a couple of things. It gives us internal access from the Welcome Center to the gym space or the event space. But it also expands that Welcome Center and it makes it feel like much less of an afterthought. The restrooms are laid out very much the same. Speaking of restrooms, the one thing I did forget to mention, another thing I want you all thinking about tonight is public use of these restrooms when the facility is not being used for events. Okay. And then the classroom space is almost identical to the last version. The classroom building doesn't really get a lot of adjustments to it throughout the different options, other than the space between the buildings that is open right now and what that gets used for. In all options, you'll see that all of these are accessed from the exterior, like storefront entrances. And in all options, we felt that it was critically important to open up the north end of the classrooms to the views of the estuary. So we've moved in all options the plumbing that is currently at the north end of each classroom to the south end of each classroom. There's not much for views facing out towards Beaver Street. It's just, business and residences and the street. And this is in line with what we've heard from the tribe and from other public stakeholders that feel like the great views of this site are not in the direction that the windows are currently facing. So as we look at what this gym configuration can hold, basically the same, right? We've taken the mezzanine on the north end, the existing mezzanine, and we've demolished it. And there's a number of reasons to do that. It's not in great shape as it is, but primarily it will not accommodate either storage or ADA access very easily. There's a lot of different levels up there. So we've demolished that in favor of putting a new mezzanine on the south end with the commercial kitchen below. And they're relatively the same footprint, the commercial kitchen and in this option and the existing mezzanine in the previous option. So we get the same basic layout of what kind of recreational sports can we get in there. Half court of basketball, full court of volleyball, a couple of pickleball courts. This next one is what we call it the baseline plus option 2. And again, this is connecting the existing classroom building to the gym building. Expand this one more time for you guys. But this time we've taken the commercial kitchen entirely out of the gym space and we put it over here in the classroom building. This cuts down on the number of classrooms to 3 instead of 4. The main benefit in doing this is that you open up the entire gym to large events and functions. The main entrance into the facility would still be in between the 2 buildings. And we've moved the restrooms kind of over towards the Beaver Street side on the south side of the classroom building there. The welcoming center is more or less the same as the previous version. So getting the benefit of an expanded welcome center that is the space between both of those existing buildings. One of the drawbacks of this is that you do have the kitchen traffic going across that welcome center corridor from the classroom building to the gym building. And it's something that we would have to work through future iterations on how to best mitigate that. And then look at what we can do here for sport layouts. In this one, being able to open up the gym to its fullest volume, we're able to get a full, I believe this is a college basketball court size that's in there. And then a couple of pickleball courts. Arguably, if there's acceptance and overlapping pickleball with other sports, you could probably get a third one in there. And then of course your full volleyball court as well. And there may be other sports too that in speaking with the city and the public and the tribe that would be preferred to be striped in here, maybe other than volleyball. And we can certainly look at that as well. And as we go into, before we go into our last option, these last 2, the baseline plus options that have the addition between the classroom building and the gym building as the main entrance, we took a stab at what that could look like. And that's what this next slide is. There are some complications to this after meeting with some of the city staff in our pre-app meeting last Friday in terms of setbacks and whatnot. But for the most part, something like this, very similar to this sort of scale of this covered walkway for these exterior accesses into the classrooms, and the scale of this canopy out in front. They may have to be trimmed back a little bit, but for the most part, a concept like this can be accommodated. And then going into our last space plan option. This one came about from, we were going through renderings of the plaza, and we thought that the first three options were going to be the main three that we looked at. And the problem with it was standing in that plaza, looking back at how you're going to get into this building, it felt like you were walking behind the existing building to get to a main entrance. And it felt like the whole building wanted to be turned around. So the concept here is that we would replace that existing lean-to on the northeast corner of the gym, and we'd build a new welcoming center there. Strategically sized, the tribe has Dragonfly. Is it 23 feet, 22 feet? 27 foot, beautiful canoe. It was at one of our community outreach events during programming. So thinking about how to best accommodate that, and that drove part of the design of that. And again, the welcoming center being a place where we want most of the traffic to go through to get to the site, and using that as an opportunity to educate the public on the tribal heritage of the site. What that does is it brings traffic. First of all, the main entrance to the facility is off of that engaging plaza. So you already have people out there congregating, activating that site. They're not walking around the back end of the building to get to the main entrance. As I talk through this option, I also want to point out this would be the most expensive option. So we are thinking about that, and I want to be clear about that. Here you can get to the gym space internally, right here. Or you can exit a little further to the north from the Welcome Center out to the exterior, where we would have canopies that give you covered access to the other end of the classroom. So even the classrooms, the entrance becomes the north side, the estuary side of the site. In this option, very much the Beaver Street side is the back of the building. And that's for the classroom building, and that's for the gym building. We did show in this one maintaining, actually this one is a catering kitchen, not the full size commercial kitchen at the south end of the gym. And that's just to show that this is a fairly smaller footprint to accommodate the catering kitchen than a full commercial kitchen. But because you have all that volume of the gym, you can expand at some point in the future if you didn't want to do a full commercial kitchen at this time. The catering kitchen in this configuration would allow for storage beneath the mezzanine, and this option would also have an equipment lift with nearby access to the exterior for trucks that may be delivering equipment for events. And because we're designers, and because we want to sort of get our ideas out there for you to view, and again, these are not finalized in any way, shape, or form, basic concepts. We rendered a few of the images of what this option could look like. So this would be an option from the plaza. And again, the same basic, it's not a basic plaza, but the same basic concept in each of the options. This one looking towards the Welcome Center. Again, I do want to emphasize you're not seeing much of tribal representation in this version. And I expect that when we come back next time, we will have had time meeting with Todd and other tribal members to get that language in there. So right now we're thinking of this as more or less a blank canvas. Okay. How we would tie potentially the north end of the building architectural language into what we were showing for that welcoming center. The welcoming center extending past the north face of the building we felt was important, because if the front of the building is going to be towards the north, And it should be reaching out to people traveling off the bridge off of First Street. It should be welcoming them and engaging them at that point. They shouldn't have to wait to get past the building to start to get engaged by people in the plaza and whatnot. You'll notice a fence back here, and we'll talk about that after I get through some of these other images here. So again, we would have the paved hardscape plaza out there. That's asphalt now. It's more or less the same footprint. We've squared it off a little bit. Super important, we think, to still maintain that hardscape out there. It serves a variety of functions, from ADA accessibility to potential for temporary parking, and farmers market, and the park remaining a park and being real flat, and us not proposing to change that. Whatever function is going on here can easily bleed out into the park if the size warrants that. And then I had been thinking all throughout the programming design that this site really needs that outdoor pavilion, that space where people can be outside, but not outside, still protected, right, from the weather at all times of the year. And where we landed was we felt it would be better to provide this deep canopy that not only gives you covered access from the Welcome Center, the north end of the Welcome Center, all the way to each entrance of the classrooms, but it's enough depth and enough height to accommodate something like a farmer's market. I call it the Santa Fe Plaza concept because that's where I'm from. And it works really well for a variety of functions. I'm going to go back up to this here. One of the problems we have on this site is elk when we start to think about growing stuff. And we've looked at all kinds of ways to discourage elk from entering the site, or what we were looking at as the community garden. And in all scenarios, you do end up with a barrier that, for other purposes, it becomes a visual barrier. In this particular option, I left it up there because it becomes a visual barrier from where you just put your money, which is into a new Welcome Center. And I just wanted to throw that out there, that we don't have a magic option to keep elk from getting into the garden that does not involve an 8 to 10 foot high fence. We can do various levels of vegetation outside that fence and try to keep them from getting up close. Take time for vegetation to grow thick enough to discourage that, and just something to consider there. I think the idea with the tribal heritage garden, and Todd can speak to this better than I, but it would be a more natural garden and would not have the fences that a vegetable or fruit garden would have to keep the elk out. Okay, I think I've gotten through all of our slides, so I want to maybe turn it over. Is Dick on the call?
I think Dick did. I was able to get on, yeah. I may have to actually stop your screen share for a second. I want to check it.
Okay. Stop. There you go.
I think he was on. Yep, he's on.
All right.
We need to promote him so he can talk if we need to.
All right, Dick. Hi, Dick. I wanted to turn it over to you if we didn't get to meet with you directly on Friday, but I think you've been able, if I understand it correctly, to see some of the materials that we presented tonight, and wanted to give you an opportunity to use the microphone.
There we go. Can you hear us, Dick?
Okay. Maybe while Dick gets that technical problem resolved, Todd, do you want to offer up a few perspectives from the
Yeah. I'll turn over here quick. First, thanks for having us down again, as always. And I think the theme for tonight is placeholders and in process. And my speech will be placeholder in process. We met on Friday, and so we really haven't had a chance to go back and consult with the tribe as a whole. But there are a couple themes we'd want to support or comment on in general that have been things going all along. And one is the food bank. And you didn't talk a lot about it today, but the tribe is very much in favor of the food bank and would hope that the only reason they'd be leaving the site is to find a better home. We're not saying this is the only place they can be, but very welcoming and part of the native tradition of feeding people when they visit your site, and just kind of social justice and all points in between. So that's very important to us. We'd encourage the city to, I know there's been discussions in the parking, but also based on the architecture plans presented, a few variances or flexibility along Beaver Street. Isn't getting confused. Beaver Street would be great because it's a super complex getting around that corner to enter where you want to be, and parking and setbacks. So if we can encourage that, we would be pro variances. And then the community garden is a bit of a conundrum because everyone flat out wants a community garden, but when you put a wall around it and then just sort of the manpower it takes to do it, and then also growing food is going to sit, it's not going to look great for 8 months out of the year. So I'd like to think of this development of this garden as not just a tribal garden, but a Cannon Beach garden, because it would be restored. We think we could do something very educational and kind of restore it back to its former glory to a certain extent, and use native plants, low water plants, and then also we could highlight some of the native plants that are used for medicinals and eating that people don't know you can eat. It'll be a great education process. And I think that can live in harmony with the elks much easier than, and the rabbits and all that are going to want to eat the squash and the lettuce. And then I know, I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but there is an archaeological component to the project. And we still want to, though, perhaps engage or encourage some restoration of the creek bed, and kind of, right now there's like 4 feet of sand. The beach used to, it used to be a slow pitch from Beaver Street out to the creek. So we think it would be very symbolic and educational if some of that sand was removed and perhaps some landscaping feature was put in there. Now, as far as the technical aspects of the floor plan, I just want to congratulate the architects on very thorough, thoughtful investigation, and I don't think any stone has been left unturned. And but as far as the tribe goes, I think we have very simple requests and needs, and I think they've all been, almost any one of those plans would allow us to meet and educate and share. So we're not going to comment too much on that. We are a fan, generally, for the people we spoke to and myself, of opening up that gym, the views and just the people, and keeping it as open as possible. It just seems to facilitate the kinds of events that we'd like to invite to your community. Other tribes come. It's a whole regional aspects. But moving forward, I think we met and had I think it was 2.5 hours, really interesting conversations and about some other details that we won't go into today. But I'm really looking forward to sort of figuring out how we can all work together and sort of develop this moving forward in a vocabulary that is both about Cannon Beach and also about the tribe, because we don't see them as separate, right? We think they're a continuum, and I think it could be really just a world-class place to visit. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Dick looks like he's on, he raised his hand a couple times. Are you there, Dick? We can't hear you.
He's been texting me and having a hard time, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Could he call in?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll call him on his phone.
Oh.
Will that cause you trouble, Rusty, as far as,
It shouldn't.
let me see if we can,
Can he call into the Zoom or via versus doing the Zoom meeting?
You could call in via the Zoom meeting. If he looks on the city's webpage, it's on there. The number's on there.
any chance you could just repeat it?
Yep.
He's probably listening.
I sent him the link from the page on your website. It
Mhm.
might be on there.
So if he dials 669 900 6833.
You get him in?
That'll get him in, and then he'll have to put in the meeting ID.
Why don't you repeat it one more time for him?
The phone number is 669 900 6833.
Okay. Justin, is there anything else you want to cover or to?
Todd brought up a really good point, was that I glossed over the food bank aspect of this.
Yeah.
I do apologize for that. And all of the options that we looked at, we're looking at leaving the food bank in place, and there is such overwhelming support for it on this site by the majority of people that we talk to, both with the tribe and as public stakeholders as well. If it's all right, I'd like to read what Dee Zimmerly had.
Perfect. Please do. In fact, it's in my notes, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So that
was nice. Yeah, this was sent to you, but when you said it at the meeting, it was like, somebody write that down.
It was very well written.
Yeah, yeah.
Receiving
But it was off the cuff for her.
That's it. It's written as it was said. So
Yeah.
I'm going to restate it here. D being a member of the tribe, of course. So as a tribal member, I want to address the food bank on the neck use property. An integral part of our culture was to welcome guests as they traveled up and down the coast. One of their stops was at neck use. As they would come up, they would ask for permission to land. We would welcome them and feed them. It seems appropriate to provide food to those in need at this site. It is therefore my opinion, and appears to be a consensus position of the Clatsop-Nehalem leadership, that the food bank should not only be tolerated as an enduring use of the neck use's property, but that it should be an integral part of the property's planning and future use. Maybe there are some changes in the building that would make it more efficient to achieve that goal. There could be information there that explains our Clatsop-Nehalem culture included at the food bank too. She has another sentence at the end of this, which it's a little bit of a side thought, but also an important one. I'd like to share that as well. When we install displays or signage that tells our history and culture here, it should be more than just a picture or a sign. Hopefully, it could be in a way that connects people to the land. One example would be to show our tribal children playing games and tie that to the games children played here as they attended school. And how do we bring that to the present?
At that meeting, there was an interesting conversation that I think started with a comment from Dustin and then followed up with he and Todd trying to sort something out. But it changed the way I'm looking at the project. I was looking at it as an architectural project. But what they started talking about is, how do you want to tell your story? And, is it in glass boxes where there's a basket or something like that? Or is it something that's going to be more dynamic? Because if we can design either one, but if you're thinking about being more dynamic and we design a bunch of glass boxes, it's not going to work. And that same line goes for the history of the land, which has been, central to this community for thousands of years. The tribe, clearly, the school. The school was a gathering place. It was a central function for a very long time. And the city as an artist community with like the Haystack Summer event and those kinds of things. So it changed from the necessarily focusing on the architecture and so having it solve everything as to what can we create that all of these things can be celebrated. And again, with the line being, how do you want to tell your story? And that was a game changer for me.
Bruce,
Mhm.
explain what you mean by dynamic.
Did I say that? Oh, no, but by dynamic, it would be when we're talking about the garden, or it might be, experience things, or it might be, it can be in a glass box, or it can be something you can go out and touch. That to me is where it's a different experience than you're going to a museum. And it's, as we move forward, we will be making decisions, whether we're doing it on purpose or not. It's how do you want to tell your story? And the fact that there's the tribe, but then you've got these excellent murals of the city, and the school has been there and has been a central point. So there's so much going on there. And how do we want to tell those stories? So
One of the, I guess I asked that because to me, dynamic means flexible and interchangeable so that you have a space that can be used for several different kinds of education or display. So the idea of having things in glass boxes could still happen for a month or two, and it gets shipped out and something else comes in. That's my sense of dynamic, because there is a hands-on part of having things in a schedule means, but also having that hands-on aspect of it is very important. So I agree.
where it became important to me is that if we create those boxes, if we create those spaces, then that's how we'll tell the story. And so we're kind of putting ourselves in that box. And to make the decision, is that the way we want to go? Is it going to be a mix of things? Do you want it to be
This is Rusty.
more hands-on or something? But it makes a difference.
So you're having trouble.
And the conversations we've had so far is let's do some rooms, let's do some spaces for exhibits, those kind of things, and you can have classrooms. But as Todd was talking about what the tribe wanted to accomplish, it's like, is that the way you want to tell is that how you want to tell your story? And that's where it made a difference. When I'm saying dynamic, it's more experiential, I guess, than they're all important, but
I guess I just don't want to see everything static.
Yeah.
I want to see the flexibility and the motion. And I see, you used the word earlier,
Let me check.
flowing.
Mhm.
I think, there's the flowing of the physical structure, but there's also the flowing of the information, flowing of people, flowing of the story. Rather than, oh, here's a vignette. This is what Native American art is. Here's another, I don't want to see anything like
I
that.
just tried.
I want you to be able to walk through and
Definitely no. Did it ask you to unmute?
experience that. And those things will evolve and change. Maybe with the season, maybe with new knowledge, maybe with culture at the time, but it's got to have that kind of flexibility, not just fixed and rigid. Because that's what I'm seeing in dynamic.
Yeah.
It's organic. It's growing.
Mhm.
It's evolving, changing. But there's a story to tell about this site. Everything from
I can try putting you on speaker.
prehistory
Let's phone here.
to the Native American culture, the pioneer
Try doing that.
current city. And
Okay, hold on here a second.
part of that is the school, the food pantry there. But I just, It's gotta be able to flow and not just be a static display. No, this is for the classrooms. You know, it's got to tie to everything else.
Yeah, and we're using all of our high technology. Finally got Dick on, I guess it's your phone, Todd?
Yeah. Talk Indians.
Can you hear us now, Dick? Yeah, it's
No.
quiet.
I could put it by a mic. Go ahead again, say something.
Can you hear me now?
And unfortunately, no.
Okay. All right. Dick, let me call you back because I think my phone might be louder. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll call you right
Thank
back.
you.
Yep.
Justin, will we have pictures of all of your drawings? I mean, will you provide those to us to look at
That's it.
for the community to see?
Absolutely. So everything that you saw tonight will be provided to Rusty to put up on the web.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Well, let's try this again.
Perfect.
Hey, so that solves the Apple versus. Go ahead, Dick.
Just say I'll be brief.
Dick, there's no need. We've all been waiting your wisdom.
Yeah,
So take your time.
Uh, I would like to say that I did look at the video from the meeting the other day, and it all just looks like such a great start. You know, I really look forward to working with PETA and with the architects in providing some cultural ideas. I see a lot of what's presented as placeholder, and that what they will look like actually will follow. If I'm reading everybody correctly, the overhangs, the walkways are kind of placeholders, and then we will get to the design of how to give it maybe a native look, how to I like the entry. I like the different concepts of what to do with the breezeway. One question that is not cultural, but is if there's a full kitchen in the gym, how often will that be used? I mean, how often will we have a banquet that will fill the gym? You know, and what I'm saying is a commercial kitchen really needed? And that kind of goes from my experience in designing a school and school kitchens. I did like the idea of having a kitchen available to the classrooms and possibly have it open to the classroom and have the walls collapse so that, you know, that's a medium-sized dinner meal opportunity, and the kitchen would be accessible. But that's not cultural, but that's just my 2 cents on that issue. I really like I said, look forward in working with City, with Bruce, and with CETA in presenting some options for cultural representation. I guess that's the bottom line. And you know, I really trust the city council and the folks at CETA to make sure that the tribe's presence is represented. And that's the bottom line. And I don't think we get any better than that. So thank you for your patience in trying to let me get in on the meeting. And that's really about it.
Okay, Dick, I'll just leave my phone on. I'll take you off speaker. All right,
Okay.
all right, and then that way you can continue to listen in. And just,
I actually can hear on the computer. I just can't. The microphone doesn't.
okay, well, you've got my number. Just call me if you want to say something.
Okay.
All right, cool. All right,
Everybody.
sure. All right, thanks, friend.
Thanks, Dick.
So Justin, I've got notes and I would really like to peruse the plan parts. But initially, 2 or 3 concepts really stood out. The entry plaza to me on the southeast corner makes a heck of a lot of sense. And I think having used that building quite frequently in the past, that's a weather safe place. Whereas the breezeway is called a breezeway for a reason. Especially the old between the 2 buildings. But you could always find a out of the wind spot on the east side. So that to me is a very positive, warm, welcoming area. And that really expands the whole idea of that approach from across the bridge. So I really do like that. The garden, the location is the location. How it turns out, I think, can be a little more of a learning experience, maybe. We could try planting stuff and see what gets at and what doesn't. And maybe a natural garden, but if somebody wants to sneak in a tomato there, we'll see. I have seen, when we were first talking about community garden there, we looked at small containment areas, generally 10 by 12 or something like that, with just elk screening around those. And those were flexible, they could be moved. So that was one of the ideas we were thinking about, just so we never dug into the ground. We didn't know. But again, the natural garden, I think, is the more likely. The swing around to the other side, I really appreciate how Kelly has looked at the amphitheater. My only thing that questioned me is going down. I would rather think about going up and giving yourself a little bit of a barrier between the little driveway and the slope that goes down to where the fire pit would be. So you build it up instead of digging it down. Plus the fact that I have seen on stormy high tides that get a wash every once in a while. So that's going to be more likely as we get different storms. So we have a big puddle.
For a pool.
The only other point, and this was just, I know you're still trying to figure out what to do with the plaza area. I walked by the food pantry today, and the line for the food pantry went in, out, all the way around and all the way back up. So the little loop that you had there would need that connection, maybe also so that the plaza park could be used. But I do like the idea of a central green space, if we can figure that out.
So if I can reply to just a couple of those, so the amphitheater being built up a little bit, that was a conversation that we had with tribal members on Friday. We were concerned about maybe some of the archaeological concerns of the site, that digging down might not be a good idea. And we know that there's fill on that site, but that amount of fill varies. It tends to get deeper amount of fill the closer you get to the estuary. And we feel like there should be some kind of a soft barrier between the amphitheater. Actually, we were thinking between the amphitheater and the park, so that you could have, the function of recreation in the park, and at the same time, have verbal arts and storytelling and fire and outdoor cooking kind of happen at the same time. And while it may be atmospherically open to one another, it could be visually, or again, just a soft, something like a berm right in between the two that doesn't hide what's going on behind, but maybe obscures part way. So love the idea. And I'd love to say that however we do an amphitheater, there's not going to be some level of retaining stormwater. But the good thing about the soil we have this close to on this site, it's going to be very sandy and it's going to drain very well. But I'm anxious to see what our civil engineer has to say.
Really do like the idea of little breakout fire pits. I think that's good.
Sam, if my intention is not to be a buzz killer, but like one of the things that you mentioned, there's a consideration that will require a council decision. So I can try to point those out later, or I can point them out now. If you would like to do it. Okay, this should take a little bit of time. There's 5 feet between the wall of the gym, the south wall, and the property line. And so Dustin alluded to it. If we're going to do something along that side, you might want to authorize us to look into some way that the property line can be extended out to the south, maybe 5 feet or some small number, but it's really very tight, going around that. And a lot of opportunities are created with that 5 feet, the additional 5 feet. That's all I have to say.
Maybe the other thing I wanted to touch on just real quick about your comments was in order to make use of that paved north patio as potential overflow parking or event parking, or for event space, equipment drop off ahead of an event, or for fire truck turnaround. We do have a spur coming out there. It's a little bit wider than the cute little turnaround. The idea is that it would have removable bollards so that it couldn't always be used, just as needed. So we are starting to think about that, but again, at a very basic concept.
Yeah, I figured that. I just was.
No, it's excellent.
There's no comment that was made with the location of that entry plaza, because it's right across from the pathway that goes, past the bandstand and all that. And so it kind of extends this, it makes what used to be just kind of the bandstand, makes it much bigger as far as an event center for the city.
Isn't there some way to tie that southeast plaza in the base plan to an entry right into the gym? Particularly if you kept the lean-to, the shed for the catering kitchen.
Did on the big one, didn't you?
Well, he said you'd have to walk around to keep the entrance there in the center of the west side of the gym. But if you had.
Is this the base plan you were thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why, if the plaza's on this lower right-hand part of the drawing, why can't you have an entry into the gym from there?
And there can, and that is another option that we've talked about as far as if we're looking at entries off of the plaza space, that is another natural sort of point of entry into the gym space.
Folks that are having trouble seeing this, if you turn around, there's a version right behind you that is as close as it is for us here, so it's nice.
Zoom into that. What we would want to see in a main entrance to this facility is something more than a pair of 3-foot doors, right? Unfortunately, because of the shape of the barrel vault and how it's framed, it's intended to be a hangar. It was built to be a hangar. It's like a shell structure how it's built. You go in there, one of the first things that struck me when I walked in that space is there's no great big glue lime arches that you would typically see in a structure like that. This is small framing members. This is lumber, not timber. When you go to cut any of those 2x8 ribs that are in there now that form those full arches from one side to the other, then we have to replace them with something much more substantial. So we want to do that in a place, and you have to do it across the full width of the gym. So it takes on a full arch, and you have to apply that treatment to both sides of the opening. Create a bigger opening. You got now a new big glue lam arch on both sides of that opening. So that's going to be probably a necessary thing with any scheme that we go with. But
if you come in from the south side on the flat side, you don't have those same issues.
that's right. Excuse me, you are right. So if we were to instead, if we're not looking at this opening, this existing opening in the southeast corner, but we're to come in off of Beaver Street, these end walls of the gym are kind of like free for all as far as our structural engineer is concerned. You do what you want with those, but please try to make as minimal impact as possible to the barrel vault. So that is an option. You are still, there's about 5 feet between the face of the gym and the property line. So if you have your main,
They'll have that issue, what Bruce is looking to.
yeah. So, but as we look at other options about the whole structural thing, when we start to look at making larger openings in the sides of that barrel vault, to get the most bang for your buck, it's going to make sense to do that in a place where it benefits both sides of the vault and not just one side. I initially thought that we would have an entrance off of this side, but then more towards the southeast corner. But the more that we thought about it and the bang for the buck, and if we did it up here in that last option in the northeast corner, well, then, you know, that allows us to extend the architecture out towards western travelers traveling westward, coming in off the First Street Bridge. And we felt that it was the dollar went further in that version.
Well, it took more dollars too.
And it took more dollars.
So are you looking for us and public to submit comments on the package we're gonna have access to? We look at these drawings, are you looking for feedback from the council, from the public? What?
Yeah, any and all. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. I realize that sitting here tonight and putting these images up on the screen doesn't give you a lot of time to really digest what's being presented. It's a good opportunity for me to be able to start answering some of your fundamental questions. I think what was not completely unexpected was to say, hey, Mr. Architect, if you can't get the answers you need today, to come back in a week, or technically we're supposed to be back in 2 weeks with revised plans, taking into consideration, things that we've heard from the tribe and things that we heard from city council and public stakeholder. So if we do another meeting in a week after you've had time to really digest the information presented tonight and formulate your questions, I think it's fair to say that the schedule might slip a week so that we can have the 2 weeks to go back and by the design.
When I schedule for September meeting.
We submitted our written comments. We discuss it. With your conflicting recommendations. You come back in your regularly scheduled 2 weeks and say, here's maybe a consensus of comments, and here's how we would address that.
And that's an option. And that was discussed with Bruce and Rusty in some of our meetings. That concern would be that I won't be there to help answer questions that may help to narrow in on some of these design iterations. I don't think that it's a impractical or unuseful way to go about it. We can still gather information, kind of like what we did in the programming phase. We can gather and dilute and prioritize. If we want to go about it that way, the other way is to just hash it out tonight. I don't know how feasible that is.
I have some of the public raising their hand wanting to speak too, so I don't know how you want to handle that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, council, do we feel like we want to just go ahead and ask public if they want back in?
Well, I have a question.
That would be Nancy.
That would be me. And my hand is raised. On the fourth alternative there, where the entrance to the Welcome Center is somewhat adjacent to the plaza, how would people access the classrooms?
Thank you, Nancy. In this option, people would enter the Welcome Center from the plaza, travel to the north end of the Welcome Center, exit to the exterior, and have exterior access to the north end of the classrooms under cover. And when I say, oh, go ahead.
So so they could bypass the gym. They wouldn't have to go through the gym. They could bypass the gym and just go outside to the classrooms. And then would the entrance be in each outside in each classroom? Then you wouldn't have any interior hallway.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that's how we're showing it in this scheme, Nancy, but well, I was going to say that adding a hallway there could be similar to how we added a hallway in that first option where the hallway's on the Beaver Street side. The problem though, is that in all options, based on the feedback that we got during the programming phase, we really want to open up that north end of the classroom building towards the estuary, and that precludes having an interior corridor along that side.
Yeah, that would preclude that. I like the idea of being able to go right from the plaza to the welcoming center instead of having to kind of maneuver around to get to the welcoming center. At least that's what it sounds like from looking at your diagrams. So I like the idea of the plaza welcoming center access.
Yeah, and I'm just going to splash that image up. This is the site plan. And that little 5-foot sidewalk to the south of the gym leading to what could be the main entrance into the site and into the event space and welcome center. That's it. It's just that 5-foot swath of sidewalk. And, it's one thing to kind of look at it and plan like this. It's amplified, I think, in perspective. And I kind of wish I would have brought a perspective that showed you how unsuccessful it is. But I can certainly make that a part of the packet that we provide to Rusty to put up on the website so that people can see that. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask anybody in the house that if they want to make comments, please come up to the podium. And Rusty, if you can find out anybody on the online public, have them raise their hand. Tim, you want to come up?
Thanks, Mike. Boy, I am so encouraged by just the possible transformation here. I didn't have that vision. That's why we hire people who do. A couple of comments. Help, we're here before everybody, before the tribe, before the town, before the elementary school, for us. And I would be very opposed to the idea of a fence on this property. Let's tolerate the elk and let's celebrate the elk like we do everywhere else. I like the go big ideas. I think we have to. This is a go big moment. The city of Cannon Beach. This is a once in a generation opportunity to get this right. And I like the idea of doing more and bigger and maybe more expensive, but let's figure that out. There were some early concepts that had kind of a half dome of glass facing the estuary. Maybe it was, I don't know, it might have been Gary Hayes' conceptual drawing or something like that, but wondering why that couldn't exist. And then just a thought, rather than the city's, what I think is fairly non-conversational way of gathering input, it would be super good if we could set up an email address where we email in a question or a comment. It could be posted to sort of a blog like thing, so we could all see what the rest of the world is asking about and what your answer is. And that would be super helpful if we could handle the dialogue that way. But thank you for such an encouraging presentation.
Well, thank you for your input as well.
Thanks, Tim.
And to comment on the question about opening up the north end of the gym fully with glass, conceptually, structurally, that is something that can be done. We have most of the structure, shear, and load bearing aspects of that existing structure taken out in the barrel vault.
It looked like there was a stage on the north end of most of the bigger ticket. I wasn't sure if that's what that was. Like the SD15.
SD15 right here. Yes. Yeah, right here at the north end.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea there is that would be the end for visual, one possibility for visual representation at an event. So in something like that, we would have screens that we would have to pull down in front of your source of natural daylighting, to project or coordinate it with time of day. And to that point, these the vision that we had for this was not only that it was open to views towards the estuary and towards that north patio area, but in this option specifically, that last option, these would be either bifolding doors that fold up and essentially disappear, or a more economical version would be a overhead coiling door, fully glazed. When those are down and when the space is being used as an indoor recreation center, we would have to have a means to protect that from balls and kids playing.
The details.
Yeah, and you know what? There's ways to do it. Cost-effective ways to do it. It's just, as designers, we have to think about it.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, really great. The feel I got from the renderings, and a picture's worth a lot to me, feels like it fits the town and the character and what I believe we would be really happy with. It looks great. Thank you. My first thing on my list was the north windows, so I'll just put my 2 cents in. I saw that you had some, that one.
Yeah,
I think that's great. Certainly support that, and of course that means that I support tearing out that mezzanine on that end. I think that's a good thing to do as well. So a couple more comments. I really love the welcoming center concept right there at Beaver and whatever the heck that street is that goes across the bridge.
Sure.
I think that's a great idea. I think that if we would be better served to connect the classrooms all the way to the gym, rather than maintaining a breezeway or a stormway, whatever that is. And having said that, I don't think that makes sense for the main entrance. It's too much out of sight, out of mind. So whatever we can do to move it over on the east side, I'd be completely supportive of. I think that's great. My last comment was kind of interesting. I have been thinking that the food pantry was going to be a problem. It was going to stick out like a sore thumb. I really did. It tickles me to now know that not only that it might be a part of the entire narrative of this the tribal story, and that it may actually add something more than what it already does. I kind of like that notion. So I hadn't thought about it that way till tonight. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Les.
Thanks, Les. Thank you.
I'm going to echo all the same things that have been said. You know, heritage garden versus a community garden. I think that's a great idea. The idea of the berm, where maybe at the top of the berm, one way you can look out and see the ocean, the other way you can look back and it becomes part of an amphitheater kind of thing. I'm a pickleball guy, so I'm going to get with the pickleball stuff in. You know, typically a basketball court can fit 3. The nets have been up for a couple of months now, and we're getting 12, 15 people easily, 2 nets going all the time. So I'd like to see 3. And one of the reasons for that is we could probably host some kind of winter pickleball thing that could drive a few more hotel rooms or some kind of thing. You brought it up before, but we haven't talked about it, is public restroom. I think this site needs some kind of public restroom access since it's so far away from all the other restrooms. A possibility for the site later, you know, as an add-on after the fact, could be some kind of outdoor grill kind of space between the 2 buildings of the food pantry and the building there. And then with the heritage, you know, maybe there's a tie-in backwards where there's tribal uses of foods and things that can be, you know, seasonally added to the food pantry offerings.
Andrew? Come on up. Okay.
Want me to go to the podium?
Good evening, counselors. I'm Margot Lawlich, I live in Cannon Beach. I agree with what's been shared, and I just need some more time to process and see the other iterations. But I really want to emphasize what you said about the fact that this is sort of a once in a generation, 2 generation, 3 generation project. And so we want to do it well, we want to do it right and honor everything we've heard. And I think we need to optimize the gym, because Cannon Beach lacks indoor recreational opportunities for all ages. And it's so important from a public health perspective, but just for our mental and physical well-being. I know myself, I leave this community to get recreational opportunities, especially indoor, because they're missing here. And it's just so much a part of the health and well-being of a community. And it makes sense to me to take the kitchen out and move it closer to the classrooms, because oftentimes you want to bring food and incorporate some type of nourishment into educational opportunities, presentations, or whatever. So that's all I have for tonight. And so much, I appreciate your work on this.
Thank you, Margaret.
You went up? Okay, go ahead.
Can we go back to that slide with the north end of the gym and the window?
You bet.
We'll get to that. I wanted to add on to your recreation comment. Even if the gym doesn't facilitate a full regulation basketball court, I mean, even if it's shorter, being able to go full court rather than half court is so much more exercising. It's so much more engaging. I think it could be an easy option. It could even just be a roll away hoop or something like that. But okay, so I see that picture with the windows on the north end of the gym, and that feels like a important area for like a secondary gathering area. I feel like that's where, like, during we're taking a break during a presentation, that's where people are going to kind of, I think, naturally congregate outside. And that could be a secondary plaza, maybe. And I think, like, having the plaza up front, you're not going to go use that or I think maybe mid-event to gather, because it's right on the street. It's not as peaceful, and it's not as, you know, there's a buffer there. Like if it's a private event or something like that, you know, you're not buttressing the sidewalk where people are going to mill around and wander through or something like that. It gives that kind of buffer. So I think that area is a really important area. I think that'd be the most natural outside area for people to congregate. And I don't know why, but I've pictured concerts and that and events in there. And I don't know why, but I always pictured the performers or the presenters on the south side. But push back out. I don't know why, but that's how I was envisioning.
Well, also, there's more light control.
Mhm.
I mean, you can control what it is. You can't, you have a light, a big window behind you. People can't see you.
Carrie Ramey, live here in Cannon Beach. Again, beautiful visuals. Thank you so much. It really helps with everything. Comments that I'm going to add to, I don't disagree with any of the comments that have been made so far. A couple practical things that I saw from your first slide. And that is having your welcome center off of Beaver Street with that corridor going to the classrooms. I just think for security and also for a welcoming for someone that's going to an evening event, not having to walk around the entire building to enter a classroom in the dark is an issue. And also having the welcome center next to the public bathroom is also a good eyes on the grounds. You've got that welcome center right in the middle, so that is going to be your mostly manned space. For the hours that the facility is open. So I like that, having that in the center. So, and probably even your event manager is going to want to be in that space. They're not going to want to be tucked away in the corner of the gym space, someplace where nobody can find them or see if they're there. So those are just practical things. And then the outside amphitheater, which I love, but I'm concerned about maintenance and also how much hardscape is going in there. And I'm sure the tribe might want to speak to that too. Love the idea, but with our wind and weather, flood, elk partaking of all the spaces. I just think about the maintenance of that kind of space and having a more flexible ability to have outdoor events that doesn't have so much leveling going on that we can have water issues and or just maintenance issues.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Seen berms used before for an amphitheater and without the concrete backing and stair step, but just contoured. You sit on the grass, lean back, and the elk can walk through it. And it's a much softer look than something like this. It looked like a maze. And I know that's just a rendering, but raising it as a berm. Also, somebody mentioned kind of a visual, bit of a physical separation between what's going on out in the field, the open area, kids playing and other activities, and a more intimate setting for the amphitheater and the breakout fire pits. So the berms are much more natural and fitting, I think, with what we're proposing here. And I think we could address some of the issues that fire pit being nothing but a sinkhole, So
We have some folks online, so I'll go to those and then I'll come back to the house if we need to. So let's start with Linda. Aaron, can't read it.
Linda, are you there?
Hello.
Hello, go ahead, Linda.
Okay, I'm Linda Eierman. I am from Arch Cape, but I own property in Cannon Beach and very excited about this project. I wanted to make a comment about the entry and orientation of the building. I think the last option, that the orientation be to the north, is, in my opinion, a bad idea. I think that people will be approaching the building for the most part on foot from the community. And so to have it be an approach to the back of the building seems very unwelcoming. I also think that symbolically, the idea is to have this be a part of the village and a part of the community and not something that's facing away. I don't feel that's very welcoming either. So I would think that having your welcoming center either on the south or east sides would be preferable just from a user-friendly point of view. I personally like the one that where the setback was a problem from the south, but that's my view on that. I also have a view, a feeling, I agree with Todd, who spoke about the fence around the garden, that a garden that requires a fence to keep elk out is not really in keeping with what we're striving for here. So if the tribe has ideas and a way to live in peace with the elk, I would certainly support that. Thank you.
Okay, Deb.
Okay, can you hear me?
Hi, Deb, go ahead.
Hi. So I am so excited and I think you guys are doing a great job. It's a lot better than I even imagined. So I would say that. So I'm going to just read this little thing. The expedition party, including William Clark and Sacagawea, crossed over Tillamook Head and found the whale near the mouth of the creek named Ecola, the native term for whale. So Clark's journals and interaction with the native inhabitants provide the earliest documentation of people here. So I was thinking, okay, so if they're pulling up in their boat and they're getting out today, what would they think? I always like to think of that. I mean, you want them to be proud. And so I guess I would reiterate, don't do it right. You know, if money you need to spend, I don't like the term of cutting back and being frugal. Do it right and do it all right. And if you have to charge for parking for summer, whatever you have to do, just do it right. This is our one chance to do it right. And it's kind of like what Tim said. I totally agree with that. And I now what they said about the food bank, I'm totally on board with that. And as part of it, because it makes sense. That really made sense. And the elk, you could get them some salt licks over there on the other side of the property. They love salt licks like the horses do. You can set up a bunch of, people are always going where the elk are. Well, they're going to be here on the salt licks. Because they love those, okay? And they'll sit and graze on those for a while. Anyway, that's just humor, okay? That's all. But thank you, Justin, you're doing a great job, okay?
Thank you, Deb.
Really good. It's so much more. It's just like so exciting to see it and how it's coming together and get the Native American touches in there. And I mean, I can't get over the whole thing with Sacagawea and then William Clark arriving in the boat. So I don't know if you can create that visual because it's really powerful for me, but it's really powerful to think about it. It's exciting. So thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
I do want to throw it. We told them where to go. Just, they wouldn't not or know what to do with it. There you go.
Next is Betty.
You there, Betty?
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Hello, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I'm very excited also, and I love that option number 4. I also would like to not have a fence around the garden, and I'd love it to be a heritage garden. And I'm loving the idea of having the food bank be a very big part of it. So thank you all and appreciate what you're doing for our city.
Thanks, Betty.
Thank you, Betty.
And David.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
All right, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I agree with a lot of what everybody said, so I won't bore you with that. I do want to say, though, that I really especially agree with the idea of having the entrance plaza on the south or southeast side for all the reasons that have been mentioned, and particularly the fact Linda talked about. That's where all the foot traffic is going to come and the connection to the park via the walkway. So I really think the southeast and the south side is really where the entrance should be. I would like to bring up one idea, and I forget who it was a few minutes ago that talked about making the site more dynamic and really experiencing it rather than just looking at it. And I wonder if there's been much thought given to access from the open space to both the beach and the estuary. Given the location of the amphitheater, I'm a little concerned that that's almost going to be a barrier between the park and access to the beach. And I'm wondering if we couldn't incorporate some outdoor activities like, grills or barbecue pits. I know I see you've got a couple of them, maybe even a canoe launch, for instance. And Deb's comment about what would Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea say if they came up the estuary? Well, the fact is they couldn't because there's no place to land right now. So maybe we should give them a place to land.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
In that regard, a lot of our plans, it doesn't show here, but we've had the vision of having access right to the creek with a canoe launch or kayak launches now. And the city owns a big swath of that property there. So we could address picnic space and truly an extension of the park. And maybe it's for you to make sure we don't build a barrier to that northwest corner. And I can't imagine that would be a problem. But that has been part of the concept all along. One reason we wanted to have it open to the north was so we were open to the estuary and the river and the ocean. So I'm confident that would be addressed in further designs.
In one of your original layout idea, it does show the fact that the whole west side is available. And what you had for the introduction, previous part.
Remember, their contract is just tied to this part.
Yeah, I know, but just to show, see the blue lines, the bright blue lines, those are connections directly to the ocean. Might be a good idea just to include that every once in a while.
You're 100% right. That was very good feedback. I think as I'm looking at the site plan here, and what great insight. This is, if you look at the grades, so each one of these is a 1 foot interval. This really is the best point of access, especially for canoes and watercraft on the site. We don't want to do anything to hinder that. When I look back at the programming report, before we had grades on the site, this is not where we had up here. This is what we had envisioned for canoe access, but it's a very good reason why it's down here. And it's because the grades are much more favorable to that.
Can I just mention that that surely is such a more natural area to launch a canoe because there's parking and a way down. Like you're going to launch your canoe from the elementary school property from the Coos. Where are you going to park and carry it? I just think that's logistically, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
You could go to Les Shirley and come across and go to go back. So having that option. The other thing that I was mentioned, and the idea of heading up the estuary, somewhere in our park plan, I believe there's an idea of continuing the trail under the bridge. So that would be a connection. if that ever could happen. It's a difficult project because it would have to be a waterproof kind of thing because that floods quite frequently. But anyhow, anybody else have any other comments or ideas, critiques? Other than Bruce? Just ask in the house. Keep going. Bruce, go ahead.
There's a couple of things that I want to make sure that especially the council keeps in mind. One is that thinking about the current circulation on the property. There's people that walk between the buildings to go out to the beach. You can go around the west side of the building. And then there's people who come in from the First Street side. And my experience is that what people are used to doing, they'll still try to do. And so we have to allow for those things. And I think especially going between the buildings, that's something that is going to happen. The next one is, oh, here's Dick. Hey, Dick, you can go after me, okay? Dick? Richard? No, he must have made a mistake dialing. He'll call me back. There's you could be having events and that sort of thing. And you're going to have people coming off the beach. And I think that there might need to be a separation of the restrooms so that you don't, like, if you look at what happens at all the locations where we have restrooms now, they're all beach related. There's a, people cleaning off the kids' feet, and we actually use more of an institutional fixture in those because of some of the problems that we've had. So I think it's a good idea to have restrooms. And I think that this was one of Randy's points is that to have those restrooms. I don't know if we want the whole beach community though to be coming in and using these restrooms. For one thing, I think they're going to be too small. And also it's people can either be here for an event or they're coming in from the beach and it's not really a match. So I think we need to think about that. And this is one that I think that Carrie brought up in any of these designs, and Dustin can confirm this. I go crazy when I see the manager's office on top of the kitchen in the gym with no windows. We need to have that space to be very accessible. We want to have that person be responsive. And so I hate to give up prime space for it, but in terms of management, we don't want to have a whole bunch of staff here. So whoever's there has to be nimble, but we have to give them every advantage we can. Yeah, and I would advocate not making a lot of big circulation changes or closing off what people are currently doing. I think that would be a problem. That's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been very concerned about that restroom becoming a public restroom.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the one on the corner of Second and Spruce, and it's just, there's always a big crowd out there, and there's kids, and they're, like Bruce said, washing, and the dogs are all there. This is an event, special center. And if you're having a small conference or an art show or something, to have the public right there in your midst, totally incompatible with what we have. We don't allow the public to use the restrooms in City Hall. It's not private, but it's not encouraged to be a public restroom. And I would discourage the use of the event center as a public restroom. If you need one that badly, that close, then it's got to be somewhere else. It's just totally in my estimation. Going to lots of conferences, lots of business meetings, and I've never experienced a public restroom in the midst of that. I think they put on signs, restrooms for customers only, because it's an issue. So keep that in mind, please.
I think we should think about having an alternative that's more convenient for the beach. I don't know exactly where that would be. I'm also not comfortable saying, well, you know, you can't come in because you have sand on your feet. And, but I think that we should separate those if we can. And the closest one is not very close. It's all the way over Second, yeah. Okay.
Well, the closest one's just across the creek. Well, surely.
But you are making this an attraction, which is gonna draw people there.
Yeah.
So you'll have to deal with.
I think
Even the non-beach people, there will need to be some kind of public.
I think as a definition of the difference between a 24, not 24, but a all-day public access restroom and an event public restroom. So there's going to be a little nuance there in the management of it. So I agree with that.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Mayor, I did have one more. That's some of the options, for example, there's one that has the entrance. When you come in, you go through the gym to get to, say, the classrooms. And I think from a management standpoint, we should be able to close down certain parts, open certain parts, but not have to have the gym open all the time just to get people in. You know, we can have a roof over the north end where people would just continue around the outside or something, but we have all these facilities open at the same time. We're going to need 2, 3 people, you know, on staff.
I've got some ideas I'm going to throw at Dusty.
Okay.
Before we get going too far.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just say last call for comments. Brandon.
Just because I haven't heard anybody mention it. I really like the available light that's in the classrooms, and that whatever you guys do moving forward, you'd be able to preserve that and possibly, you know, bring it into the gym space from the south. I didn't see anything on the renderings that allowed that in the gym.
In the gym. I just want to drive.
I may have missed something.
Yeah. So when we talk about placing new openings in that barrel vault in strategic places, because when you do that, even if it's for an opening on one side, it gives you options for the full length of those glue lamp arches. And one of those options is to start introducing clear story lighting into that space. So we did have an option in there to just show how something like that could work. I'll pull it up again just so you can.
Brandon was talking about the south wall, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, south wall.
I definitely saw the north wall, and that's not that it won't allow light in. I just, you know, around here, we get a limited amount of light in the winter, and any additional, I think is welcomed. I just really like the available light that's currently coming into the classroom setting. And I know the whole south wall is problematic in its construction, but there are nice high ceilings, and maybe we could maintain some of that up high if you were needing to put a breezeway in there.
Yeah. When we were taking people through, anybody that was a photographer just was loving the light in those classrooms.
Well, yeah, because there wasn't one light on. We haven't had any power, and it's completely lit up.
The challenge is when the sun is shining. It gets really hot now.
I had a quick question, and this is kind of the architect speaking, but also I think just for the benefit of the project as a whole. What are the realities of expanding the site to the south of the gym, just even, you know, the width, 75 feet of the width of the gym, taking up that parking as, I think everyone that I've heard talk about the access and everything, it would make his job so much easier, and it would make such a better building if that could be set as a priority to kind of figure out up front, because he's designing around it right now, and I can see his painful attempts at it, but give him 10 more feet on Beaver Street and you're gonna have twice as good a building. Do you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah, and it's
spot on.
kind of put the council on notice, we're going to be asking.
I think it's a physical possibility to always add, all we have to do is figure out the lot lines and and understand we're losing parking and all that kind of stuff. Initially, we gave them the parameter of the footprint.
Yeah.
So he's working within his parameter, but if we want to start discussing changing that, we can.
Mhm.
Again, I've got some ideas I want to throw at him first before we.
Take two, right?
He trained as one.
Right.
Mhm.
The worst. Sit around.
So I think the next day,
Everybody's an architect.
That's right.
That's good.
and this is the time when we critique and find out and I think he's getting a lot of good information. I did hear a few things that are going to be against each other, but that's understood. I think that's how this works. We have to battle it out and we'll come up with some new sketches and some new ideas and throw them out there, and we'll have another meeting like this, and hopefully we'll get some more folks coming in, and this has been great.
Yeah, it has been very good.
Nobody's commented on the roof. And that was one of the things in the past, we spent a lot of time trying to talk about what kind of roof we would have, and yet here's this rendering, it looks great. Nobody's commented. I know it's just a rendering and there's more studies and more evaluation, but I guess I just get my vote. I think that's a great looking roof design.
Well, thank you. That was by design. I didn't bring up the roof material yet because that is one area where it's of particular significance to the tribe to show native vocabulary representation there. It's prominent, right? You see that from far away. So I want to work through some ideas with them. For today, we showed a big black metal roof. Metal is something that I've told Bruce, as a architect concerned about building science and a tall roof facing the full brunt of coastal weather. I'm going to advocate for that. Whether or not the budget allows for it, start looking back at other options, but that is your bulletproof roof. And for me, the most important system on a building begins at the roof level.
Protecting everything else, all the rest of your investment.
And also environmentally, that type of roof will last 80 years. And we'll put several asphalt shingle roofs on in the meantime. So there's other reasons too.
And to be fair, there's a number of environmental arguments that can be made for or against any particular roof.
Yeah.
My first thought though is I've been in that building in a hailstorm.
I'd love to.
Metal roof on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be fun.
Have a council meeting that day. First of all, thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it. And we keep talking about the cost. And I want to remind the council and folks in the audience may not be aware of this. We're using TLT funds to pay the debt service. There is a significant amount of headroom left to be able to borrow. So it's going to be a council decision, looking at the prices and the costs and things, but we can still use that. I think we take in about $440,000 a year in that, and the note that we have now is $232,000. So there is room if we choose to go ahead and add to the bonding on it. So going beyond the 4.6 million is a possibility. And we have spent some of the 4.6. So all is not lost.
Okay, council, last comments? Great job, Justin. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Teamwork. I've got a whole team behind me. Thank you so much. And again, we really appreciate that.
And added ideas, throw our way or towards the project, but do it quickly so that he has time to sort it out and bring it back to us. Okay.
And we'll create that capability on the website.
Are we going to have another meeting on the 28th then? Is that it?
That is the next scheduled meeting.
Okay.
I don't know how we left it. If you all want me to, Kelly and I to come back in a week and talk through some of the questions you all might have or concerns, or if you want to leave it to just written comment, individual comment, we can sort it out in the office on our end.
Why don't you see how many we get first and let us know in a couple days?
Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Okay,
Good idea.
sound good? Anything for good of the order, council?
What a treat.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all.